everyone. Welcome to Song Sparrow Paper Crafts. If we haven't met before, my name is Susan Fox Bowen and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Welcome to a brand new episode of Terrific Tuesdays. Today we're going to be getting a sneak peek at a new online exclusive product that launches next week. In particular, we're going to be focusing on the hybrid embossing folder and how it works. So let's get started. So today we are taking a closer look at the Changing Leaves bundle. This is a new online exclusive that is going to launch in the online store on July the 3rd. And this bundle includes a photopolymer stamp set, a set of coordinating dies, and a hybrid embossing folder, which that's really going to be the focus of our card that we're going to make together today, showing you what a hybrid embossing folder is all about. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what's going to go into our card today. So today's card does an excellent job of really showcasing a hybrid embossing folder. And Stampin' Up! Has done a really cool thing with their embossing folders and dies where they work together to both emboss and cut at the same time, assuming that's what you want to do. So just really quickly, let's take a look at this, how this works. So as you can see, this die was resting in this embossing folder, and in particular, whenever you are working with it, you'll feel it click on, and you'll know that you have it right because it's going to click into place and it doesn't move. I am attempting to make it move, and you can see it has seated properly over that shape. And then when you put your paper in there and run it through your machine, you're going to get the embossing, this detailed embossing, and it's going to cut these individual shapes for you. So that's the beauty of a hybrid embossing folder. So for our card design today, we're going to be using our hybrid embossing folder to get our leaves here, and we're going to be using a sentiment from the stamp set. In addition, you will need Pretty Peacock for your card base. You'll need the Country Woods designer series paper for the focal panel base, a strip of oxidized copper. I used the Pretty Peacock and Cajun Craze or copper sheet here to coordinate, a sheet of the copper clay tartan foil, and some very vanilla cardstock. You're also going to need some copper embossing powder, the Nested Essentials dies. In particular, I used the largest rectangle here, and some embellishments, and of course dimensionals, because you know how much I love those. So let's get started making our card today. All right, so getting started on our card here, I am beginning with a base of Pretty Peacock. I have already cut this to size and scored it. It's a standard size, the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Nothing fancy. And I have also already pre-cut my piece of the oxidized copper. It's 2 inches wide. It's going to go edge to edge on the card front. I'm going to leave just a tiny little bit of the Pretty Peacock base peeking out on the side because I liked how that looked. I liked that framing that it gave me. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere that to my card front. It's up to you how much you want to leave. I probably would guess I left maybe about 1/8 of an inch on the side there. Just adhered it like so. I'm going to set this aside for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and take care of stamping and embossing my sentiment, and then I'm going to do all of my die cutting. So I'm going to use some Versamark here. I want to rub my cardstock to be sure I don't have any embossing powder that sticks to it. Now, I learned a little hack where you can use a dryer sheet instead of an embossing buddy, and I have found that to be very effective, and I like it much better than the embossing buddy because then I don't end up with that powder everywhere. So, little hack there I thought I would share with you. All right, so I got lots of Versamark on my stamp here, and I'm going to stamp it down on the bottom. As you can see, I'm using up every little bit of this piece of very vanilla cardstock that I have. And I'm just going to coat this really well with my copper embossing powder. If I can get the lid off. There we go. It did not want to cooperate. I always hate to have the lid off to get started because it would be my luck that I would knock it over and end up with embossing powder everywhere. All right, got a good coating on that. I'm gonna set that aside for a moment, grab my heat gun. And we will get this done here. Ready? All right. So I'm going to use the oval stitched die from the Autumn Leaves set to die cut my sentiment. And when we are die cutting, I'm also going to die cut my focal panel base while I'm at it. So I'm going to go make a little magic on these two things, but I am going to show you in detail that hybrid embossing folder. So here we go. All right, so now I have both my sentiment and my focal panel base die cut here. I am going to set my dies and my die cut pieces aside, and I'm going to get ready for our hybrid embossing folder here. So what you are going to need is obviously the embossing folder and the leaf pattern die from the Autumn Leaves set, and you're going to want your embossing panel and tools for your embossing machine, your die cutting machine, in order to make this work. So now what I am going to do is I want the largest leaf here, as well as I believe this is supposed to be a maple leaf. That's what I want to ultimately be die cut whenever I run this through. So I need to be sure my paper is the right direction. I want this side, the copper clay side, to be the side that has the embossing on it, not end up being debossed, right? So I'm going to use this other side. It's going to click into place on both sides here. This is the side I want to cut down. So I want to be sure whenever it's closed that I've got it nice and lined up. So I'm going to have both of these leaves out of my copper clay tartan foil. I want my Stampin' Up logo to be on the top. I have plenty of room to slide mine underneath here, the way my particular setup works. You might have a different sandwich than what I do, which is fine. I mean, we all have different setups, right? I mean, ultimately, you just want to be sure that whatever setup you have you are using the appropriate sandwich, which is just all of the layers that you layer together in order for it to cut and emboss for you. My apologies, I'm shaking the camera. I'm trying to get this to where we're going to be able to see it. Okay, so now I'm going to run it through, hopefully without shaking the camera too much. And what I should have when I open my folder is die cut leaves that are also embossed. And I do. So those were the 2 leaves that I was looking for. And now you can get a feel for how this folder works. So there's only one way that it will fit as far as interlocking. And you could hear it kind of snap into place. And if I go to this other side, obviously it's not going to line up, right? Because the pattern's backwards. So that's where I was kind of fumbling there a moment ago. I realized that I was trying to line up the more difficult side. You can line it up this way, but it's going to lock into place on the other side. On the side so that your cutting edges are facing up. So that when you close it, you're closing the cutting edge on the top of your paper. Okay? All right, so now let's clear this off and do a little card assembly. All right, so now we have all of our pieces together, and I'm going to get started by adding some dimensionals to the back of my focal panel base. I don't like saggy middles, so you're always going to see me use a whole lot of dimensionals, but you use however many you wish. There's no right or wrong here. All right. I'm going to go ahead and adhere it on here. There's nothing that tucks behind it. Next up, I am going to adhere my sentiment panel, and I'm going to let it rest on top of the base for the focal section. So I'm only going to put the dimensionals along the bottom, because I want those to be on the same plane. I don't need the sentiment to stick up and above anything in this case. And I want a little bit of the end to come over like so. Just like that. One thing I will caution you about as far as working with this tartan foil is it is thin paper. It is not a heavyweight paper at all. So when you are doing more intricate die cutting, or like in this case, embossing and then die cutting, you might find that it sometimes cuts through a bit more than what you would like. So just kind of a little word there. So I had to do a little surgery on the back of my leaf whenever I was setting things up for this next segment. I ripped off the top portion, so no bueno there. I'm going to have my larger leaf be in the background as far as the 2 leaves go. So it is going to sit on top of my focal panel, but I only want it to have 1 layer of dimensionals here. I'm going to need take this off to put a dimensional right here. Hopefully that little edge won't show. And I'm going to put a smaller one right here, just to be sure that the centers stand up for me. All right, take my backings off here. And I want that stem to overlap my sentiment a little bit. There we go. Perfect. And I'm going to take this other leaf and I'm going to have it overlap over here, but I'm going to want it to have two sets of dimensionals on this leaf to be sure that it stands up taller than the larger leaf that I have on my backdrop there. But I can get away. Let me double check it. I'm actually going to do a third layer here because I want it to stand up just a little taller than my other leaf. Yeah, like that. All right, so I'm going to put one here and one there. That'll do it. Okay, so I can take the backs off here. Slide this into place, and I'm tucking this leaf so in a way that it won't be super obvious that I've got a little overhang on my dimensionals. Oh, and I just covered up that sentiment, so don't get so concerned with placing your leaf that you're not paying attention to where your sentiment is. I almost messed that up, guys. All right. There we go. How about that? Otherwise, it was just going to be our amazing. Okay, great. Don't know who's amazing. You are amazing, is what it's supposed to say. All right, and I'm going to fill in just a wee bit with some of the copper neutrals, sequins, just to give a little sparkle here and there. I love sparkle on my cards. If you've followed me for any amount of time, you notice probably that I use a lot of dimensionals and I add a lot of sparkle. Those are just things that I do. And although the copper sequins are going to disappear a little bit in our oxidized copper paper, that is okay. Because they're still going to catch the light and catch the eye. So there you have it. It comes together really quickly. I hope that you understand a little bit better how the hybrid embossing folders work, that you can see that it allows you to add that texture to your leaves. Of course, you can use this leaf die on its own to simply die cut your stamped images. But if you want to add that little extra detail with the texture in your leaves, then this is the way that you do it. So I hope that that helped you get a good idea of what this new set called Changing Leaves is all about. It launches in the online exclusive section of my store on July the 3rd. So tune in then and you can get a close look and pick it up for yourself if you're interested. I thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you the next time around. Until next time, see ya.